Okay, fantastic. So, hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this evening at NAMI Rochester. I am so honored to bring Chief Singletary to the table and have a conversation with him this evening about mental health and all the things that are going on out in our world right now. And so, Chief Singletary, welcome, and thank you very much for agreeing to speak with me this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. For such a great conversation and an important conversation that is so needed right now in our community.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So, just so that everybody who's watching is aware, we had Chief Singletary and I have been talking for a little while now, and our grand plan for the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, was to get out into the community, actually in each of the four quadrants of the community, and have conversations about mental health and the way that RPD is working very hard within our community to meet the mental health needs, not only of our community members, but also of your force as well. And so certainly when the world opens up again, we will get back to doing that, but we thought that we could at least reach out virtually and connect. So and then the other thing I just want to mention is that we have such a wonderful, longstanding relationship with RPD, and our plan for our walk, which was supposed to happen a couple of weeks ago and is now happening virtually at the end of May, May 30th. If you'd like to learn more, just head to our website. But we were planning to do a really big splash this year, and we always do an award for the CIT Officer of the Year. I know you'll talk more about CIT this evening, but we weren't able to do that live this year. So stay tuned, because I'd really like to do a big splash for that as well, because it's a really important service that you provide to the community. So tell me, Chief Singletary, have you seen a change in the mental health needs either within your force or within the community since the onset of COVID-19?
Well, I tell you what, we have seen a number of calls for service increase during this period of COVID. As you know, throughout the year, we respond to a myriad of calls that involve individuals going through a mental health crisis, and we rely on our partners in the community to help us deal with some of those calls as we respond to them. Our forensic intervention team, FIT team, with the Office of Mental Health within Morrow County, also assists us, as well as NAMI organization. So we rely on partners in the community to do that. So we have seen a number of calls for service increase relative to mental health, and we know we're going to see that increase throughout this pandemic and even post-pandemic. You know, a lot of people are experiencing stress, trauma, and anxiety during this time. And one of the things that I always am worried about with my law enforcement officers is their mental health as well, because if they're not healthy, they cannot go out there and make the community healthy and well.
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly talk an awful lot about self-care here at NAMI, and that's one of our top priorities as well. And it's certainly, as a leader of an organization, making sure, and I'm sure you feel this way, that if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not really all that helpful to those we're trying to care for in the community. So, for sure. So, how can we as community members work together with RPD and your officers to take care of our mental health collectively as a community? What can we do to participate in that?
I think one of the things that we can continue to do is educate one another, continue to work with one another, not only in times of crisis, but when there is no crisis going on at all. I think that's where we are more fruitful with one another, learning from one another, and have a real understanding of what the different types of services that are available in our community. There are many people in this community who do not know the services that Rochester has, and many individuals in this community who suffer from mental illness.
Absolutely, and I think that's really well said. It's so often that I think it's human nature sometimes to try and solve a crisis when you're in the middle of or solve a problem, I guess, when you're in the middle of a crisis, which is probably the worst time to try and do that. So I really appreciate you saying that it makes a lot more sense for us to have conversations when we're feeling ready and able to do that. So what's the one thing that you wished the general public had more knowledge about in terms of the training that you're providing to your officers, and what's really going on behind the scenes in terms of mental health training at RPD?
Well, we have a myriad of resources that we have available to us in the community who can kind of assist our officers in handling different types of services, one of which is the Office of Mental Health, one of which is your organization, NAMI. We receive several trainings throughout the year in service training that we can kind of incorporate into the overall training picture within the department, as well as our academy training. One thing that's
Mhm.
very important when recruits come into the academy, that it's important that they know that we take mental health very seriously in our department, because these are the individuals that they will be dealing with in the community, and they need to know the resources that are available to these individuals that they will be coming into contact with. And as we talked about earlier, self-care. It's very important for these officers to know what resources are available to them within the department. We try to set up peer-to-peer counseling where they can have one another to go to, because who knows our circumstances that we're dealing with as a department better than someone who is out there doing the same job each and
Right.
every day. And we also have, our office officer assistance program. As you know, we talk about 20 years of in law enforcement. There is a lot that goes on that an officer will see over those 20 years. And we talk about PTSD in the military, and now it's kind of moving over to law enforcement, because some of the things that these men and women see throughout the course of 20, 25, 30 years has a serious impact. It affects them greatly.
Yeah, and I mean, I can imagine that the effects of some of the other frontline workers and PTSD within the COVID crisis will certainly come to the fore as well. I mean, I think it's a really valid point that you're saying that it really is a community effort to help folks. Talk to me about stigma within the force. Do you see folks struggling to get help, and do you think some of that's due to stigma?
Yes, very good point you brought up. It's something that law enforcement executives across the country are dealing right now with their workforce. I think last year we saw NYPD have a number of officer suicides. These are officers who obviously are at a breaking point, unfortunately, and they feel like that there is no other resource to turn to, and they ultimately take their own lives, sometimes with their service weapons or off-duty weapons. And it's very sad when that happens, because it affects so many. And as a law
Absolutely.
enforcement executive, you know it's the compounding of trauma that these individuals are dealing with, whether it's their personal lives as well as that bleeds into their professional lives as well. So it's a myriad of things. But one of the things that we will continue to do is find out ways to not alienate others within our own field. A lot of these men and women are going to deal with issues of other individuals, and they are dealing with those same issues at home. So it's like they're going to respond to a third party and help that individual, but they're dealing with the same issues. So the law enforcement community as a whole has worked on ways to become more accepting of individuals suffering with mental health. Mental health.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's really well put, and I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, the deaths by suicide that we're seeing within the larger community, and certainly within the first responder community, is really clearly something that's heartbreaking and devastating, and also something that we really want to pay very close attention to in terms of our prevention efforts. So I appreciate that for sure. What's a success story that you've seen? There are, I would say, in terms of the folks that I spend a lot of time talking to and working with within the community, there are certainly people who, unfortunately, probably by no fault of anybody's, have had unpleasant interactions with law enforcement, with either themselves, if they live with a mental health condition themselves, or with a family member. So tell me a little bit more about that, and what you're doing in that arena.
Well, as you know, as you stated earlier, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to hold many town halls throughout the city of Rochester in each quadrant. And unfortunately, COVID happened. And we hope to do that when we're out of this, pandemic. But one of the things that I wanted to do was there are people in the community who do suffer from mental health, from mental illness. And, they often sometimes do not know that there are resources that are out there, and they don't know who to turn to, and they are sometimes apprehensive to call 911 and have the police respond for fear of what might happen at the end of that call. And I think
Right.
one of the things I want the public to know is that we are there to help. So one of the things within the town hall was going to have, organizations like yours, NAMI, Office of Mental Health, our crisis intervention team within the police department. We have a number of officers who are trained in crisis intervention that can come and respond and help when people are in need. So that's one of the things that we really want to harp on. And also, when you call 911, why does the dispatcher ask so many questions? That really is information that we really need to know from a law enforcement perspective to help us better deal with the situation. And I think our crisis intervention team, the training that they receive is just phenomenal. And the resources that are available in the community to help individuals who are in crisis. I have two officers come to mind, Officer Daryl Hogg and Officer Jim LaRue. And I think Daryl Hogg actually received the CIT Officer of the
He
Year
did. He
award.
did. Yeah.
And I was there for that ceremony. And those, the stories like that and the success stories that you talked about, as you just mentioned, are the reason why we do this job, because it goes a long way when you can see somebody come out of their struggle, come out of their issue that they've been dealing with, and know that there are people out here to help them. Officer LaRue, Officer Hogg, I remember them having contact with an individual who was going through a crisis, and they developed a bond with this individual because they not only responded to his home or visited him, not when he was in time of crisis, but also when he, obviously when he was in crisis, but not when he was in crisis as well. They, to the point where they would take him food, bring him clothing. And so those are the stories that really make it all worth it, that the training that we put into this, that the connections and networks that we put into NAMI, Office of Mental Health, and just the myriad of resources that are out here that we can use to help people. Those are the success stories, and those are why we do what we do.
That's great, and you're absolutely right. I mean, that celebration of Officer Hogg was incredible, and there are so many officers who I have personally come in contact with, who you just know really care, and either I think they care deeply. You don't go into service work for the money, right?
No, you don't get rich doing this job.
You don't. And I also think that, the way we put it at NAMI so frequently is that 1 in 5 people live with a mental health condition, and the other 4 are their family and friends. And so ultimately, all of us in our personal and professional lives are affected by this. And so, a more empathetic and compassionate world is what we're seeking. So for people who aren't familiar with CIT, can you just say a little bit about what that training entails and just describe that a little bit?
Yeah. So we have a number of officers. I think over half of our patrol officers are trained within our crisis intervention team. And it's officers who receive above average training, more than the normal hours of training, and also training throughout the year to help hone their skills, because this is like a special team. It is a special team. These are officers who receive additional training to the likes of no officers who are on the job and who are able to go out there and respond to situations, help individuals who are in crisis. And also, we have our community partners come in and provide the resources that they have to the community and are able to lend to officers, because I always say we cannot do it alone in the police department. And we need organizations like yours, NAMI. We need the courts, and when we're all working together, firing on all cylinders, it's better for the end client. It's better for the person who's receiving the help, because the whole goal is to, help this person out of this crisis to the point where we don't get their, continue to have these crises occur in their lives, because it is a serious matter for them that they have to deal with. So we're very proud of the number of people we have been able to put through this sort of training, and it really involves emotional health, mental health, physical health, all those things that go into trying to help someone come out of a crisis who are in a mental health crisis.
That's great. And I know it's a program that has been in this community for a very long time. And I think that goes to show that this is certainly not a new commitment, that this community, we can all feel very proud that our officers have committed to this. So, and it is voluntary also, which makes it, it really shows that if over half of your force is already trained and other folks are in line, this is something that people are wanting to do, which is just phenomenal. So thank you for that.
No problem.
So what kind of advice, if you're a young person today and you're interested in going in law enforcement, what kind of advice would you provide to young people?
I would say, this is a job there where you don't get rich, as we talked about earlier, but you will become richer beyond the belief if you are able to help someone out of a crisis. If you are able to just, bring who you are. We can teach you how to be a police officer, but what I tell people all the time is that we cannot teach character. And
Mhm.
to your point about being on this crisis intervention team, it's all voluntary. So you have to have it within your heart to want to help people, want to deal with people who are going through a crisis. And that's what police officers do each and every day. Our job is to try to leave a situation better than we found the person in. And, if we can do that, and if everybody does that, I think the world would be a better place to be able to leave a situation better than when you first found it. And that's what we try to do each and every day. So we are always looking for great men and women. And thank you for mentioning that and putting that plug in there. I think our test is coming up in September. So
Okay.
we are always looking for great men and women to join. And like you said, we want more people to join crisis intervention team. And when you go through the academy, you will receive a snippet of crisis intervention team, because we want all of our officers to receive the type of training. And, like I said, coming out of this COVID-19, we are going to see many individuals coming and going through situations. People are losing their jobs. People are going through financial crisis. And there's so many things in society that leads to this mental health factor that we talk about. And I think sometimes there are many people within our own field of law enforcement who are police officers. So sometimes we have to check on them, because when you're in it, sometimes you don't see it. And
Yep.
so we know as people who are on outside, know when someone is not acting in the same manner in which they typically do every single day. And they may be stressed. Sometimes we all feel stress, and that can lead to other things. I know right now they're saying alcohol sales are up like 55%. So we're going to see a myriad of issues come out of this COVID-19. And like I said, just the unemployment rate alone is going to have a big effect on people. And unfortunately, 911 is going to be called, and the police officers and those individuals and community organizations are going to be relied on heavily to help us deal with the problems that we're going to see coming out of this COVID-19 period.
Well, I really, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we're already seeing that for sure over here at NAMI. And I guess I again want to reiterate that the partnership that goes on in this community, particularly as it relates to mental health and addiction, suicide prevention, is really pretty, it's pretty special. And so we really consider ourselves very lucky to be a part of it. So I can't, final question, and I can't help myself I can't close the interview without asking you, what do you do, Chief Singletary, to take care of your own mental health?
That's a great question, and I tell you what. Now that the gyms are closed, the restaurants are closed, only thing we can really do is outdoor activities, and we have to be careful about doing that and being socially distant. I tell you what, I don't do enough, to be honest with you, and that's one of the things my man staff, my team at work, they are constantly on me saying, "Chief, you're working too much. You got to be careful. We don't need you to be chiefing from Strong Memorial Hospital in a bed somewhere."
Right.
And so I'm very cognizant of that. But I like to travel when I can. And as you know, I'm sure this job is a very stressful job because we care about people. And when you care about people, sometimes it can take a toll on you because you want the absolute best. You want to be a perfectionist. And when people are going through crisis, and particularly your own people, I mean, I have almost 1,000 people that work for me. And I know each and every one of them have been having the same anxieties and fears that people in this community have. So,
Right.
even when you're on vacation, when you're traveling, you're away from work, you're still worried about work. And sometimes you do have to unplug, and people say, go on a cruise, go on a cruise. That way you can't answer your phone. So there are things, and family is important to make sure that people are keeping an eye on you. And friends like you and other community organizations who ask those questions to make us think about, what am I doing for self-care? Really puts it back into perspective, because we can become overwhelmed within our jobs day in and day out.
Absolutely. Well, the next time I see you, I'm not going to save that question for last. I'm going to ask it first. But thank you so very much for your time this evening. I know you are incredibly busy. And we are, again, I just want to reiterate that we're so honored to have you here with us tonight, but more so to have your partnership within our community, because it really is, without that, we certainly, none of us can do this alone. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in person at some point soon, and certainly getting out in the community and having our conversations when it's safe to do so.
Likewise, and thank you for having me, and I appreciate the work that you do for our community as well.
Thank you. Take good care.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye.